like to give everybody out there listening a very warm White Cat welcome, because you're tuned in to the White Cat Outdoors podcast. What's going on, everybody? It's like day, I think, 10,000 of quarantine because of Corona. Nick's feeling it. He's in the studio today. I'm White. Tommy's sitting right over there, too. He's here.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going, everybody? We're day drinking.
Yeah. It is midday, but when you're on quarantine, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
It's pretty delightful.
No rules on quarantine.
Definitely no doubt about that. You can pretty much do whatever you want all day long because most of us don't have to go to work. But
we're here grinding it out for you.
Yeah, we're risking our lives.
We are 6 feet apart. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Social distancing.
Absolutely. Make sure you're practicing it. And I guess it's springtime, right, guys?
Yeah, it definitely is. Weather's getting warmer. Birds chirping.
It is getting. I knew it was getting warm because Nick rolled up in the Jimmy with the tube doors.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
He was pretty bundled up, hood up with the vest on, but it's that time of year though. It's getting there.
Yeah, and the hounds got their first rabbit of the year, so you know that those are starting to come around.
Oh yeah.
Not that we wanted them to. They just sometimes get out there and get it done.
Sometimes. So what else comes with springtime?
Turkey hunting.
Yeah. Jellyheads. That's what we like. Swamp roosters. Whatever you call them.
Thunder chicken.
That's what we're talking about today. Pretty much, I'm going to let Nick and Tom pretty much run the show here today because they're more of the turkey guys than me. I mean, I do plenty of turkey hunting, but not near as much as them. So I guess I'll just give it over to you, T. Take it over.
Right. Like White said, today we are going to talk turkey. And the first thing that I think of when I hear turkey hunting is that gobble on the roost. And I tell you what, guys, it gets me fired up. There's really nothing like hearing a gobble on the roost in the early morning before the sun comes up. Whole woods can hear it. It's fantastic. But today we're going to go over some little tips, tricks, and tactics for turkey hunting. There's a lot of T's there.
A little alliteration.
Yeah.
Tom Turkey tactics and tricks.
Yeah,
Got
there you
that?
have it.
It's a tongue twister.
So today is what, guys? We're
episode 15.
It is episode 15, but
I don't think he was asking that. I think he
no,
wanted to know
I'm
the date.
thinking we're recording here April 2nd,
Ish.
right?
Yeah.
You guys are going to hear it, a few days later. But now is the time of year where you got to start doing your scouting.
Yeah. Find your birds.
You got to find your birds. And the way I like to go about finding the birds is find a field, okay? That's 90% of the time those birds, they fly down off the roost. They're going to strut in the woods for a while and come out into the field. So they're going to follow the hens out there. And if for scouting, if you plant yourself in a big open field, maybe there's a big ravine behind it or some hemlocks where you feel it's a good spot for those birds to roost, odds are those birds are going to come out there in the morning. And if you're in that field, you're not going to be too close to them where you're going to blow them out of the roost before the season starts.
Yeah, you'll just be able to hear them and locate them.
Yeah, you don't want to blow them out. You got to act like you're not even there. So, actually, 2 days ago, me and my brother went up to...
Yesterday.
Yep, yesterday. Me and my brother went up to our farm up there in Clymer, New York, and we did some locating. We sat on the field edge, and we heard just a few gobbles off in the distance, probably about 300 yards off this hillside, and watched a couple hens come out. But kind of unproductive morning. It's never too early to start your turkey hunting season, but
it's definitely too early to start your turkey season.
Turkey scouting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
The hunting part, it's definitely too early for that.
Yeah,
you can go find them.
Well, different states, but if you're talking New York here, Tom, I think you're a little early.
Wait for the season to start. But anyway, so you get yourself positioned on a field, wait for them to come out, and you want to take note of where they come out because turkeys are very patternable animals, and if they come out in that section of the field, odds are they're going to do it again the next day.
Except if you set up to hunt them there.
Yeah, then
they just go do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, they're kind of funky like that. But a good starting point is,
where you saw them.
Where you saw them come out. So, a couple weeks.
Set on sign. That's what I always say.
Absolutely. So a couple weeks before the season, you're out there scouting, you watch these birds come out there 2-3 days in a row. You take note of that. And then come opening day, what you're going to want to do is set up, 30 yards from said spot. And in a situation like this, when I'm not trying to call the birds, I'm just trying to hunt their pattern, I won't call on the roost, or I won't call once they hit the ground. It's tough. It's really tough.
You don't call period?
No,
You're just listening. Let them do their natural thing.
So while we're talking about setups and everything, I know you and I have different tactics when it comes to setup using decoys and whatnot. I know you're big on decoys and I'm not.
Are you talking for hunting or for scouting?
For hunting, because he was talking now about, now that you've figured out where they're at, where you're setting up to hunt 30 yards away from them.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how you use decoys to your advantage, and then maybe I can dip into why I don't use decoys?
So the only time I really like using decoys is in this situation where I've scouted the birds, I've watched where they're coming out in the morning, and then I go set up on that field edge. And what I like to do is I like to put, 3 or 4 hen decoys, and, just they have different positions, like feeding hen, just something, where they're not alert, where they're kind of just grazing, they feel safe doing what they're doing. And then I like to put one Jake decoy, because that when a big gobbler comes out and he sees a Jake with all of his hens, he's going to get angry, and he's going to come in there and try and ruffle some tail feathers. So it's a good way to get them to come in right to your decoys, 20, 25 yards in front of you. Most of the time you're going to get some strutting action out of that, which it's always cool to see a big mature tom in full strut. So that's when I like to use decoys. In the woods, maybe I'll put out one hen decoy, 35 yards in front of me, just to try and get that hung up gobbler to come in. But Nick, why don't you go ahead and try and talk about the advantages of no decoy?
So for me, I don't like using decoys. I haven't had a ton of luck with them, so I've developed my own tactics. And basically, I try and I don't hunt field edges for birds much. I try and stick inside the woods, but I try to use terrain features to draw the birds to me. I try and sit in places that hide me from where the bird's probably going to come from. So if you find those little saddles or like deep cuts, like on a ravine side, that you can kind of tuck yourself below, so they have to get in range to see where that sound's coming from. And another one that I really like is, sitting at the top of a ravine, about 15 yards from where it drops. And this one, it takes a little bit of, you got to be quick, because then birds, what happens is they come up over that hill, and as soon as they get to the top, they're going to scan. If they can't see a hen, they're just going to go right back down. I've watched it happen many times. But if you put yourself in range, you can kill that bird as soon as his head pops over the top. And I've seen that work before. And like I said, just using the terrain to your advantage and keeping out of sight of where the bird's at, so he has to come in range to see where that sound's coming from.
Mm-hmm. And like what you were saying, how they pop up and come right back down. A lot of people don't realize that when you're turkey hunting, it's not natural for the gobbler to go to the hen. The way turkeys actually work is, the gobblers are gobbling and they bring the hens to them. So when you're trying to get the bird to come to you, you're already throwing their routine out of sync. So that's why if they don't see something right away, that's why they like to hang up and stuff, because they're waiting for the hen to come to them. So if you're not in range as soon as possible, you'll lose their interest really fast.
Right. So, I mean, decoy, they can definitely help you, but I've had them hurt you too. Turkeys, people
Physically or emotionally?
both. Turkey hunting has hurt me physically and more emotionally than anything. But
that hurts more though.
Yeah, it does. It cuts deep.
It's a longer lasting scar.
Yeah, actually, a little quick sidetrack here. The biggest emotional hurt I've ever had from turkey hunting, I was up at our farm in Clymer, New York with my brother Nick.
I already know. I know where this is going.
I would be heartbroken still if this happened to me.
You know what? We're gonna give both sides of the story here.
No. This is a different story.
Really?
I know what you're thinking. We're gonna get to that one later.
All right.
When we're talking about calling tactics.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, yep, I like where you're going.
I feel like you're already setting it up for yourself, though. We just need to give two unbiased sides of the story. We'll let the listeners decide.
They can decide in a little while.
I know.
What's this story?
Yeah,
'Cause I don't know if I know what this
is
one
a
is.
total different story. So me and Nick were up there, hunted hard all morning, and you know how it goes. Well, maybe you don't know if you're not a turkey hunter, but for those of you that don't turkey hunt, a lot of the times, action's hot until about 8 in the morning. And then those gobblers, they get paired up with their hens, and they will not leave them. Trying to call a gobbler from a hen it's very challenging. Not to say that it's impossible, but it gets a lot harder. But so a lot of times from 8 o'clock till about 10 o'clock, action slows right down. And about 10 o'clock, those hens peel off the gobblers and go lay an egg or sit on their nest or whatever. And those gobblers, they're back looking for hens again. So around 10 o'clock, usually things get fired back up. So, me and Nick were hunt till about 8 o'clock, go to the local diner, grab a quick breakfast, and then back in the woods about 9:30. And sure enough, Nick was actually doing the calling this time. And we sat down on the bottom of this hill, and Nick lets out a few yelps, and gobbler hammers back. And we're like, oh man, getting excited. And every time you do a hen call and a gobbler hammers back, you are in your mind 100% certain that bird is running in and it's going to come right to the barrel of your gun.
Absolutely. That's what they all do.
I've had that thought every time.
Yeah, every time one hammers back, you're like, yep, got him.
Here he is. Any second now.
But as it turns out, that's really not always the case. They get hung up at 60 yards or whatever and
It's almost never the case.
do their strut circles and then walk out of your life. But this particular time, this bird did come literally running down the hill right to me and Nick. And he's coming down the hill. You can see his big long rope swinging as he's running, and I'm getting pumped. Because this is the first time that I've visually seen a turkey actually running to a call. And he gets to about 40 yards, which is well within my range. And I put the bead on him, give the squeeze on the trigger, and the gun clicks. And I was heartbroken. Gobbler starts looking around. He hears that click.
Apparently they have pretty keen senses.
Yeah, he didn't like it, and he took off up the hill and ran out of my life. And that was the most heartbroken I've ever been turkey hunting.
Well, that was your first opportunity at a big longbeard too, I think.
No, I've had more.
Oh, that's right. You have, but that was like, I guess,
that was
just the so close, but
Yeah, the
no
whole
cigar.
scenario was...
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I mean,
that was a big
there's
bird.
been multiple times where, I've had a long beard just outside of range or in range but behind a tree or something where I just couldn't get the job done. But this time in particular, he was in range, in the open. I pulled the trigger, and my gun malfunctioned and didn't go off. And this was a bird for the books. He had a
Yeah. Solid 4.5 inch.
no.
beard.
This thing.
No, it was big. It was probably right in that 10 range. It was a
yeah,
big bird.
and it looked like a gosh darn beer bottle swinging from his neck.
Nice.
But yeah, so that was a heartbreaker. Sent my gun back after that, and they gave it a tune-up. And I tell you what, it makes jelly heads now.
Flat out lays him down.
Yeah, she's a turkey killing machine. But anyway, where was I before I got sidetracked on this heartbreak story? Talking about field edges and whatnot. Right. I know where I was going.
Tom's on it.
Decoy usage.
Yes.
You're talking about how I like to use them.
And it's hurt you, and you were getting into how decoys have hurt you, and I asked physically or emotionally. That's where that all started. So you got to tell us how decoys have hurt you in the past while turkey hunting.
So yeah, there's no question that turkeys are smart. So a lot of the times I've had them come in to 55 yards or whatever, and they see my decoy, and then they just start strutting, and they know that hen is supposed to come to me. I see the hen, so I'm just going to strut out here and wait for her to come in. Well, that decoy you got on a stick obviously is not going to go into that gobbler. So they figure out real quick that
Something is amiss.
Yeah. And, then they back away. So I think in that aspect, it could be your advantage to not have a decoy. That way they don't see the hen and they have to come looking for it. Another thing about decoys is most of the land I hunt is private land. So you have to be careful on public land because I've heard stories of people, even though stalking a turkey is illegal, if someone sees a gobbler out in a field, a lot of times people will try and stalk that gobbler and not realizing that it's your decoy and you're sitting behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've actually heard stories of, people shooting a decoy that they thought was a gobbler. So just if you're on public land where you're going to be running into other people, I wouldn't recommend using a decoy. But
and be extra careful when you're about to shoot something. Make sure it's not a decoy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you shoot a decoy.
Yeah, I don't know.
Turkeys don't sit still.
No, they're always head bobbing, move. They're doing something all the time.
Scratching the ground or something. They're doing something. I've never seen a turkey just stand and not at least move its head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not like deer when they're trying to figure something out. They don't lock up and just stare for 10 minutes. They are always moving and trying to see something else, or if they can't figure it out, they're gone.
Yeah,
even when they're strutting, they're just circling. Like they don't just stand in one spot while they strut. They're still moving around.
Yeah. So, back to, the field edge you're sitting there, you got your decoys out in front of you, a couple hens, a gobbler. You think these birds are just going to come out right into your lap. And a lot of the times when you're set up on them, they decide that, this day we're going to come out like 60 yards down from where we normally do. And then they come out into the field like always, but just not in the same spot. And then you watch them, 80 yards do their thing. And it's a heartbreaker because you're like, they came out here 6 days in a row. I set up here. Why did they move down? So that happens a lot. So then what I like to do is just wait for them to go back into the woods because turkey, they have great eyesight. So if they're out in the field and you get up and move, they're going to see you.
Yeah, there's no making a move on a turkey.
Yeah, so you got to wait for them to get back into the field or back into the woods, and then that's when I like to make my move. Then that's when I move into the woods. And this is where I think the most fun turkey hunting comes into play. I've had really good luck sitting on a field edge and just watching them do their normal pattern without calling.
Yeah, see, that's why I stay in the woods is I get impatient. I like to make things happen instead of just wait them out on a field edge.
Yeah, it's a good tactic. It's worked for me, but it's definitely more exciting to go in the woods and try and call them in. So
another thing about the woods is you cut their eyesight down. Like when you're talking about, them seeing the decoy from 80 yards and then they hang up. If you're in the woods, they can only see so far because of the trees and brush and stuff.
Right.
Even shadows and stuff can throw off anybody's eyesight.
Exactly. So it forces them to come, even if you are using decoys in the woods, it forces them to be closer by the time they see them as opposed to being out in a field.
Right. So actually, let me backtrack just a little bit. I don't do this setup where I sit on the field edge every single time I go turkey hunting. If a lot of times those birds don't come out into the field until 10, 11 o'clock. So I'm not going to, if I've seen the birds out in the field at 10 o'clock, I'm not going to get there first light and
wait 6 hours.
Yeah, I'm going to set up in the woods close to where they roost and, try and call them in. But we'll get to that strategy a little bit later. We're still on the field edge strategy. So those birds go out of the field back into the woods. I give them, 15, 20 minutes to get far enough from the field edge. And that's when I make my move into the woods. I kind of try and circle down close to where they were at. And the first thing I like to do is just a yelp, like a locator yelp, try and get that bird to gobble. And
so when you say locator yelp, you want to, what exactly do you mean by that?
So when a hen...
Could you demonstrate it, please?
No, we're not demonstrating.
No, probably. You guys probably
just
want to hear that into a mic.
No, just describe what you mean by a locator yelp.
So basically when a hen is by herself looking for another bird, she will make a series of loud yelps, I guess.
Well, I mean, most people understand what like a Yelp is, but I feel like people that are new to turkey hunting don't realize that there's several types of Yelps.
Right. So the locator yelp it's the loudest of the yelps.
And it's more like a long, drawn out Yelp.
Yeah, kind of like a.
And we're doing it.
I thought you said you weren't doing it, Tom.
Oh my God, we're going.
Yeah, but
There's only so much explaining you can do without the actual sound.
Yeah. But I don't have a call in. That's kind of just like that's more of the cadence.
That's his best he could do. Actually, that's
No.
all he sounds like in the woods too.
No, that's the cadence, not the actual sound. But you get the idea. And a lot of times, birds will answer back to that. So you got a bird to answer back, and now you got to be like, okay, now I got to give this bird a reason to come in. So then you got to get a little excited. You know, maybe do a little cutting, maybe a little cackling, some excited hen yelps, which same sound as a locator yelp, but it's a lot faster. So, you know, you do a couple excited hen yelps and then mix that in with a little bit of cutting.
I tell you what, Tom, not everybody's heard Tom call turkeys, but I get excited when Tom starts cackling and doing them quick yelps. It's a sight to behold.
Yeah, Nick doesn't know how I feel about it, but I'm just going to say it right now. We are going to do a turkey calling video. So
No, I agree that we could do a turkey calling video. I just said that we're backed up on footage right now.
don't worry. I got you guys. I'll get it done before turkey season. You'll have a demo on locator yelps, excited hen yelps, cuts, cackles, purrs, clucks.
The whole nine.
Gobbles.
No. I don't recommend gobbling in the woods because if there's another turkey hunter around, odds are they're going to try and come into your gobble.
Yeah.
Which,
Tom, have you ever had another hunter approach you while you were calling in the woods?
I have. I was actually back behind my house, and
This is a really good story. You're going to want to tune in.
so I start calling, and I hear this bird gobbling, and he's pretty far away. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to try and close my range just a little bit. So as I'm closing my range, I see this guy sitting at the base of the tree, and he starts waving his hands. So I sneak over to him, and he goes, "Hey, was that you calling back there?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" He's like, "That was really good. You mind sitting down calling for me? See if you can get that bird to come in?" Yeah, I guess. So I sit down behind him and call again, and the bird hammers back. And, you know, he comes in about 20 yards, and I don't know. Like, I could have shot this bird, and I was behind him. And I don't know what he was doing. He had his gun up and everything, and he just,
Let him go.
yeah, I was kind of confused. But anyway, I called the bird in for the guy. The rest is on him. But
What was it? Did you talk? I'm assuming you talked to him right
No,
after.
he walked the other way, never said another word.
So pissed off, just got up and left.
yeah, no, I go down to him. He's like, "Did you see that bird?" I'm like,
Yeah, I was waiting for you
"Yeah,
to
it was
shoot.
like 25 yards in front of you. Like, what happened?" He's like, "Oh, I got a single shot 20 gauge. I just wanted to make sure I had the right shot." I'm like, "What were you
25
waiting?"
yards now to do it.
I don't-
That's prime shot there,
Any
buddy.
closer, you're gonna hit him with the wad. But anyway, so you know, you get him to answer back with some excited hen yelps, and if you can hear that bird is gobbling and getting closer, and I like to shut up,
Yeah,
just
I'm all about that.
quiet. Because that bird, if he's started to come in, he's gonna commit. He's gonna come in.
Yeah, they know where that call's coming from. They're gonna
Yeah.
come investigate. If they've closed 100 yards, they're still coming.
Yeah, I know, and it's tough because that bird, he's gonna be gobbling his head off, and you just gotta sit there quiet. I know it's so cool, like when you call and he hammers back, but it pays to resist that urge.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times,
Especially here in Pennsylvania with all the hunting pressure that we have, our turkeys are so used to hearing calls. So if you do really small things wrong, you can really ruin those birds.
right?
They're not going to come in.
Then, so if you know that bird is closed, 50 yards, 100 yards, that's when you're going to want to hang tight. And I wish I would have learned this trick earlier, but I didn't. And I think it definitely help. a lot of times you'll sit there for 20 minutes and you're like, where is that bird? Why did he stop gobbling? And you think he left or whatever. So you're like, oh, maybe I'll just get a little bit closer and try and call again. Well, I've tried that trick a lot of times, and a lot of the times I'll get up and walk 50 yards, and that gobbler was there, and now I just spooked him, and he took off running.
Mm-hmm.
So even though he's quiet and not coming in, he's still there. He knows exactly where that hen call was coming from. You just got to be patient and wait. So, you sit there, you wait, and then 20 minutes, half hour, even an hour goes by, and now you see the bird come out behind a tree and he's 80 yards away, and you're getting excited. A lot of the time he's going to come into about 60 yards, and that's when, he knows that hen can probably see him, so he'll start his strut circles and try and get that hen to commit the rest of the way to him. And a lot of people, they see that gobbler and they think, oh, I need to get super excited here and get him to come in the rest of the way. But that's not how turkeys normally function. So what you're going to want to do is, some soft yelps, some clucks, some purrs, a lot of feeding calls to try and get that turkey to come in, that extra 20 yards that you need to get them to 40 yards so you can seal the deal on them.
Mm-hmm.
But, that doesn't, turkey hunting is one of those things where you're never going to get the same experience twice. What are you doing?
Just a little smoke breaks, all.
We're having a smoke break?
Yeah, we're just gonna do a quick one.
I guess we'll have a quick smoke break.
Yeah. Nick, you wanna take over here?
Yeah, I could do a smoke break.
Smoke us up.
Yep. Pack your pack, ready to go. So this week's smoke break, we're gonna do being that we're talking turkey, I'm gonna do a fried turkey that I have perfected. It's delicious.
It is delicious.
So,
I was never a huge fried turkey person until this. And I tell you what, it hits the spot.
It's delicious. So what you're going to do, you're going to get your turkey. This works for a wild turkey, or if you buy a turkey in the store. If you get a wild turkey, you're just going to have to spend a lot of time plucking, but it is worth it. It's been done. Delicious. A few prerequisites, things to talk about before we talk about frying turkeys. One, use caution. If you're not an adult, get one.
Don't burn your house down.
Turkeys are very challenging to fry just because it's a heavy piece of meat that you're dropping into there, or not dropping, you're easily putting in there.
Hold it 10 feet above and let go.
So it's going to take a little bit of practice to figure out how much oil to put in there before the bird goes in. I usually just guesstimate that, but I just recommend having a big pot and no way of overflow. So what you're going to do, you're going to do the math first. You figure out how many pounds the turkey is, and then you multiply that by 3. And that's going to be the minutes that your turkey is in. So if you
3
had,
minutes per pound.
Yeah, exactly. So if you had a 5-pound turkey, which is pretty small.
I think that's a chicken.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's say
Why don't you make it a
20
turkey
pound.
weight?
We'll go 20-pound turkey. That's a big turkey. That's probably store-bought. But you do 20 times 3. That's an hour it's going to be down there. And
how did you get that? 20 times 3 is 60?
Yep.
Right? So
60 minutes
60
or
minutes.
1 hour.
Good job, Tom.
Thank you.
Make sure your oil is at 350 degrees. I like to get my oil up to about 370 before the turkey goes in, because you're going to cool the oil really fast. And if you get it right to 350, drop the turkey in, it's going to get greasy.
I'm sorry, I wasn't really paying attention at the beginning of this. Did you say what kind of oil you use?
I use peanut or frying oil. I stick away from the vegetable oil because I think vegetable oil self-ignites between 375 and 400.
Yeah, you don't want that. It's just a mess.
So
I've seen it happen.
Seen it 100 times. So peanut oil, frying oil. And the last thing is you got to make sure that the turkey's internal temperature is 180 degrees. That's so you know it's
done.
Safe and ready for everybody to eat. But so now that we got all the safety things out of the way, let's talk about how we're going to prepare that bird. And how I like to do it is a little Frank's Red Hot. You get your injector and you pump tons of Frank's Red Hot into that turkey.
Like a bottle's worth?
Probably about a half bottle if you get the standard bottle.
Do you mix anything with
nope,
it?
That is
just
it.
Straight Frank's
Red
Red
just
Hot.
Boom. Just keep injecting. If you got
same spot, different spots around
different spots all over the place, into the legs, into the breasts.
I don't think the same
everywhere.
spot would distribute the flavor much.
Well, maybe there's people that
They
having
put
fried
that
a
shit on
turkey.
everything.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that's exactly it. I love Frank's Red Hot. And then the outside, that kind of depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes I'm feeling like I want to do a little bit of Cajun on the outside. Sometimes I'm like maybe a little bit of mustard. I know that sounds crazy, but you put a little mustard or something, and
Like French's yellow.
yep, yeah, something like that or Dijon. It puts a nice crust on the outside, kind of like like a batter almost, if you will. I started getting away from dry rubs while I'm frying because most of it just gets into the oil. It doesn't really add much flavor, and you end up just ruining the oil prematurely. But like I said, get your bird all prepped. You slowly get it into the oil, and you've done your math.
You don't want to just drop it right in.
Oh, heck no. And make sure, this is another big safety feature. Make sure that bird is totally thawed. Do not drop a frozen turkey in oil. Bad things. Bad things all over.
And wear gloves while you're dropping the turkey in because grease is
Little
going to
splatter.
spatter everywhere.
And they actually, if you're interested in doing a fried turkey, they actually make little kits. And it's basically like a hook that goes inside the turkey and then basically a strong coat hanger to help drop it in there. Keeps your hands away from it. But a fried turkey is absolutely delicious. Puts an extra little spin. I did one for Thanksgiving this year.
Thanks, Gremmons.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
thanks,
delicious.
Germans.
So especially in quarantine, mom's probably cooking like crazy, like mine is, and running out of ideas. So this is something maybe you could throw at her, or not throw it at her, but suggest maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't
doing
want to throw a turkey at Mom. I don't think she'd appreciate
Yeah,
that.
suggest, maybe a fried turkey. Maybe help her with it. Be a little good bonding time. But that's this week's smoke break, and I hope you guys try it because it is delicious.
Right on. So I guess we'll just get right back to Tom. What were you talking about? You probably forgot again.
No.
Bunch of nothing.
Yeah, bunch of useless crap. Don't even. No, I was talking about how I've been on hundreds and hundreds of turkey hunts, and I don't think one has ever been the same as the other.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, every time you go out, it's a different experience. It's always a learning experience. So, I mean, it's not going to happen one way every single time. But I'll just give you, the perfect scenario for
That
It
will never happen.
that, each of my different tactics that I try would work out in my mind. But a lot of times, obviously, it doesn't work out like that, and you have to just learn new things on the way. So, start with the field edge. You scouted your birds, you know where they come out. You set up 30 yards from there with your decoys, and like clockwork, they come right out, strut in front of your decoys, and you lay one down. And done deal. That's all there is to it. Odds are it doesn't work out like that, so you're going to have to try something new.
And you will learn something new every time you go out.
Yeah. And then if I'm not hunting a field edge and I'm hunting the roost, actually, let's talk about a good place to find the birds where they're roosted. So birds, a lot of time, if you got a big ravine, they're going to roost on the ravine. If you have hemlocks, they love roosting in hemlocks.
I have not seen that personally.
Seriously?
Mm-mm. No, they're typically more, for me, open trees, easier to fly in and out of.
Are they near hemlocks?
I would say they're near hemlocks, but I personally, I could, just because I haven't seen this doesn't mean it doesn't happen, or Tom hasn't seen
happens.
it. But for me, I have not really seen birds roosting in hemlocks, just because I guess my thought
Have you
is,
ever scouted in the hemlocks?
don't have to.
No, I know what Nick's saying though, because I've seen, and it kind of goes with both of you.
I tend to see more like oaks and stuff on the edges of ravines, or
Oh.
maples, something that's more open. But that, like I said, that's just in my experience, and my deer hunting and turkey hunting tactics are different from Tom's, so I'm not really necessarily looking in the same place as he is.
Yeah, but like what I was saying with both of you, I see, like you said, with them flying in and out, it's easier to get out of hardwoods, but I see a lot of them in hemlocks, not like actually in a hemlock tree, but there'll be a hardwood tree mixed in with a ton of hemlocks. They'll be in that hardwood. That's something that I have noticed in certain places. I have seen them in hemlocks too, a lot. But so I definitely a place to start is hemlocks.
Yeah, you gotta know your property too.
Yeah,
Because if you don't have
absolutely.
hemlocks, obviously they're
don't
not gonna
look
be
for
on hemlocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think the best place to find them roosting is, in a big hardwood tree with some branches that come way out along the edge of a ravine. The reason for that is, it's easier for them to fly down when they can fly into the side of a ravine. It's not as steep of a drop for them. They're not going straight down. They can come down at an angle.
Yeah, they could be 40 feet up from the base of the tree, but they only have to go down 20 feet to get to where they're going.
Yeah. So, you scout your property, you find a big ravine that's got some big hardwoods on it that look like, some turkeys could go roost there. So then you go to those trees and you look for turkey feathers, turkey droppings, all that kind of turkey sign scratches. A scratch for you guys that out there that don't turkey hunt is where a bird will literally scratch the ground, remove the leaves, and look for bugs and stuff in the soil to eat. So it looks very similar to like a scrape in the archery woods, but there's no licking branch or anything. It's not always.
Yeah, it'll be out in the open. It'll be like a bigger area.
Yeah, so they'll scratch the leaves away, eat some worms, eat some grubs and whatnot. So you got your idea of where those birds are at, where they're roosting, and
well, now that we know where to find them, what kind of calls do you like? Not like sounds, but like specific calls do you use? Like mouth call, box call, pot calls.
We'll get there. We're still on the picture perfect hunt.
Oh, you're still talking picture perfect?
Yeah.
That'll never happen?
Yeah. So, not that it'll never happen. Don't expect it to happen every single time you go out, because it has worked like clockwork for me.
when you got Trevor his first turkey, that was a clockwork deal on his first ever sit.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I told him, I was like, don't expect this every time. But so you find out where the birds are roosting. If you can't find the time to get in there and scout it out, find the feathers, find the droppings and everything, you can also, just go out there in the evening right before dark. And a lot of times they'll gobble on the roost before the sun sets. And you can kind of get an idea of like, okay, those birds are 200 yards away in this direction. So you know where the birds are roosting. You're not hunting a field edge. You're going in to hunt the roost. I don't like to crowd the roost. I don't want to blow them out. I have done that, just trying to get just a little bit closer. And
you always want to be a little closer.
Yeah. Then the birds, you hear it sounds like helicopters taking off. You kick 3 or 4 birds out of the roost, and you're like, oh, crap, this
It's all bad.
Yeah. So I like to stay about 100 yards from where the birds are roosting. And naturally, in the turkey world, this is how it works. The hens will call on the roost. Gobblers will gobble back. This will go on for a while. And then the hens fly down to the gobbler. So if you're sitting there, 100 yards from all the action, and you're starting to call and those birds are hammering back, and I've done it. It's a lot of fun because on the roost, they gobble like crazy. So, they'll gobble, you'll call, they hammer back. So you're like, oh, I got to call again. You call again, they hammer back. And you got yourself convinced that that bird is going to fly down into your lap. But what is actually going on in that bird's mind is, okay, this hen knows where I'm at. She's going to fly down and come to me. And hens typically fly down before the gobblers because the gobblers like to see the hens fly down. And once they see that that hen is near the base of their tree, that's when they fly down and they pair up with their hen, is basically as soon as they hit the ground. So the best way to go about the roost hunt is you sit down, you just let the birds do their natural thing, and you let them gobble, you let them fly down. You don't call until they fly down. And then if there's a bird still gobbling, odds are he's not paired up with a hen yet. He's the one that missed out on that boat, and now he's looking for a hen. And then you have a good opportunity to call that bird in. So that's when I typically like to start calling on the roost, or on a roost setup. And so that bird hits the ground, he's still gobbling for a while. So then you don't need to locate that bird, you know where he is. So you can just get into some excited hen yelps, some cutting, some cackling or whatever. And if all works out, he's going to come in on a string, and he's going to be right in your lap. But it doesn't always. It has worked out like that. Doesn't always work out like that. A lot of times,
I thought you were talking about the perfect hunt here, so it should always happen.
yeah, in the perfect setup, that's how it should go. You sit down, you hear the birds on the roost, they fly down, a couple birds still gobble, you call them in, done deal before 7 o'clock. But, like I said, that doesn't always happen, so you're going to have to, mix in some different tricks and tactics. A lot of times what does happen is, I've had it happen to me hundreds of times, where you're calling to a bird, he's coming in, and all of a sudden, here comes a real hen. And she starts calling and intercepts you. And you could be...
Women turkeys just don't respect other women turkeys, I tell you what.
No,
sure
they don't.
don't.
They just try and steal the show.
Watch your mans. They're
mans.
out there. Those are ghetto turkeys out there. They steal your man without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Yeah. So a lot of times what will happen is you'll be calling to a bird, he's coming in, and then you get intercepted by a real hen, and they have the ability to walk right up to that gobbler. So it's very difficult to call that bird away from the gobbler, but a trick you can do is you stop calling to the gobbler and start calling to the hen.
That happened to you and I one time up in New York, and we had this gobbler coming in on a string and got intercepted, and this hen was pissed off, and Tom started hammering at her, and Tom could not start calling, and she would just come up twice as loud, just trying to overpower everything that Tom was doing to get that gobbler's attention. It was so funny, and it was an awesome experience in the woods, just sitting there listening to him. Even though we didn't end up getting the bird, that was one of the most fun turkey hunts I was ever on, just because
Yeah, it
of
was a blast.
all the interactions between the turkeys.
But so when you're calling to the hen, the best thing you can do is she'll call, and then you hammer back and try and mimic exactly what she did. And what you're trying to do is kind of piss her off a little bit. And if you can get her to come into you, then odds are that gobbler is going to be following her.
Everybody likes a good chick fight.
Yeah, yeah,
Even gobblers.
Yeah, he's going to want to come in and watch. But so that's, another way to go about it. But now that we've talked about, the two scenarios of like the field edge, perfect deal, and the roost, perfect deal, now I think it would be appropriate to get into when it doesn't go perfect. Because that is...
Actually, I thought we've kind of already talked. That's kind of like
Yeah,
wrapped into different tactics and
getting
how to use
intercepted
it.
by hens.
I think we wanted to get into more towards like the different types of calls, and because you could go on for days about.
I just want to hit. I just want to hit the big ones real quick.
All right, run us through the big ones then, Tommy.
So, some tricks and tactics to persuade the gobbler to come in when everything doesn't work perfect. We'll just go over a couple. The two hunter approach. Well, it's actually a one caller, one hunter approach, because what you're going to want to do...
It's a two-player swing.
Yeah, is you'll have one guy that's, he's got the gun. Well, both people typically have a gun, but one person has, it said, look, I want you to get this bird. I want you to shoot the bird. So he's going to go up 40 yards in front of the caller. And that caller is going to come to the bird, or that caller is going to call to the bird. And when that bird comes in and hangs up 60 yards from the caller, well, he's only 40 yards from the guy with the gun.
20.
That would only be 20.
Yeah, sorry.
He's into shapes, not math, boys.
We've said it 100 times. So it still holds
true.
Yeah,
you got the hunter, and 40 yards behind him is your caller. Bird comes in 60 yards from the caller, 20 yards from the shooter. That's a great way to
close the gap.
Kill that hung-up gobbler. Another thing you can do is, if you're by yourself, you don't have your caller, is to call to a bird. If he comes in, gets hung up at 60 yards, does his strut circles, you wait for that bird to walk away. When he starts walking away, start calling again. If he answers back, move back 50 yards and call again. If he answers back, move back another 50 yards and call again. When he stops gobbling, that means he's coming in. So then when you call and he doesn't answer back, that's when you want to move forward about another 50 yards, sit down and shut up. Because that bird's going to come in to where he last heard you calling, but now you're 50 yards closer than that, and he's going to come right into your lap. So keep backing up until that bird stops gobbling, because that means he's on his way. Move forward, sit down, and don't make another sound. And we've had that work. And that's really the two biggest tricks, two most effective ones, I think. Hands down, turkey hunting is much easier if you have a hunter and a caller.
Definitely.
That's definitely the best way to go about it, because if you get a bird to answer, 3-4 times, most of the time in my experience, I've at least seen that bird come into 60 yards and do his strut circles just out of range. So if you got someone to call for you and you can be up ahead of him, that is probably the most effective way to go about it.
For sure.
Now we can get into... Actually, can I get one more beer? We're going to get into some different calls here after I get another delightful. It's a raspberry lime beer. Kind of tastes like sherbet.
You're not going to get one of those.
Frank's telling me we're all out. That's a heartbreaker, guys, I tell you.
But while Tom's getting his new beer,
Blue now.
one thing that's pretty neat is
yeah, that's pretty neat.
I started making my own mouth calls. So I've been jumping in, mainly using mouth calls. Our other host, White, over there, he builds his own slate calls, or friction calls, if you will. They're not box calls.
Pot calls.
Yeah, pot
friction
calls.
call. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's pot call, because he's done, glass.
Friction's a very broad category.
Yeah. But anyway, so we, in the past year, have all been using homemade calls, but they still fit in your general category as we talk about, what ones we're using. I think overall, I think for locating birds and stuff, I really like using my slate call or something. Like either I've used aluminum, glass, copper, slate. There's waterproof ones that are like more of a stone,
like
synthetic
crystal. There's a lot of different types of friction surfaces for those pot calls.
So when I'm not really worried about a bird being right on top of me, I've found I like to use my pot calls for that. I just tend to get pretty good sound out of them. And
well, they say basically pot calls are the most accurate to the sound of a turkey. A box call is your loudest call, and a mouth call is your most dynamic call. It can do the most things.
I have practiced. Box call is not my thing. Can't really use it, so I jump right to a pot call. And like I said, that's what I use for my locator. And then once I get a bird that's committed or I'm after, put the pot call away and I start using my mouth call. Because that way I can, if he's close, I can still call while being like looking down the barrel of my shotgun and not really create much movement. Because like at that point, you're typically going to be doing more like clucks and purrs, and you can easily do them without moving too much. So that's where it becomes really effective if you don't have to tie up both your hands with a pot call. So if you're looking into getting into turkey hunting, definitely practice up on your diaphragms and mouth calls.
Right, for me, I have a bag of tricks in my turkey vest, and it's got 3 or 4 different slate calls, pot calls, a couple box calls, and my strikers and sandpaper to scuff the pot calls and what have you. But rarely do I break that baby out. Normally, I just stick to the diaphragm calls. I know they're not as loud. They're actually the quietest of your basic turkey calls. But turkey have extremely good hearing, and they're going to hear you from 200, 300 yards away, no problem. That's if there's no leaves on the trees, like early turkey season, which I think is probably your best bet at getting a bird, because they're not wised up to other hunters yet. But once those leaves come on the trees, then that kind of cuts your distance down quite a bit. It kind of deadens the woods and sound doesn't really travel through the leaves. But anyway, I use mouth calls because you can yelp, you can cluck, you can purr, you can cackle.
Gobble if you're good.
Yeah, I can't do. That's pretty much the only thing I can't do on the mouth call is gobble. I
You can make the sound.
Yeah, it just doesn't sound great.
You
Not
could
gonna
call it a
convince
gobble.
turkey.
Yeah, I've had birds gobble back to it, but
That's more of a
that
shock gobble.
might be more of a shock gobble. Yeah.
Yeah, just because they answer a crow call doesn't mean they think that was a gobbler.
Yeah. But yeah, so I typically use mouth calls just because how diverse they are. But the thing with a mouth call is they definitely require the most practice.
Mm-hmm.
So a little trick I like to do is keep one in my car and practice on my way to school, on my way to work.
Yeah,
to
because
and
if you
from
do
the
it in the
grocery
house
store.
for long enough, somebody's going to get irritated.
Yeah, you're gonna piss people off if you just turkey call them out.
So car
And-
rides are your best bet.
Yeah, you got no one there to judge you when you're just starting out. And my dad always was a pretty good mouth caller, so I'd be calling and squawking and sound like shit and getting judged by dad. And when you're in your car, there's nobody judging you, so you don't have to worry about that. But
And another thing too, even if this is your first year getting out turkey hunting and stuff, turkeys have a pretty short memory. If you blow up a hunt with bad calling or wrong techniques, it doesn't blow up that spot. I mean, I've blown up hunts and then killed that same bird later in that day, just in a different area. So I mean, I think also just to try and get an idea, get out there and practice in the woods, because the biggest thing is the cadence. It's not necessarily the sound.
yeah, every turkey doesn't sound the same. It's the same.
It's the
cadence,
cadence.
like Nick said. Yeah.
So if you can get the cadence down, which there's tons of videos on it, we're going to create a video pretty soon. It's going to be better than anything else on YouTube. So don't even waste your time.
I'm thinking
other
I'll
ones.
be behind the diaphragm. We'll get Nick on a pot call. It's gonna be awesome.
I could show you a few tricks I got, because I do a pretty sweet, excited hen, mixing the cutting clucks in with the yelps.
You actually won best in show on your clucks and purrs.
Yeah, in a nationally sanctioned class.
Yeah.
Or in a tournament. So, yeah, I guess I could, dabble a little bit on the pot calls.
He didn't win the tournament, but he did score the highest in clucks and purrs.
Yeah. And
there was people
saying a
coming
lot.
up to us asking how we did at nationals.
Yeah.
And we're like, but this is
I had
my
a
first time.
I had a homemade slate call in my pocket, and that's how I did that.
yeah, these guys, they were coming up with briefcases with like 30 calls in it.
And using their hand to gesture a bird. That was probably the best part, is watching these guys up there just yelping and just moving their hands. And because the way they go is the judges are behind a curtain. They can't see you. But for whatever reason, if you use your hand, it makes you do better.
you have to become the turkey.
Yeah.
Like they would literally like
Speaking of becoming the turkey,
bob their head.
and epiphanies. I guess we weren't talking about epiphanies, but Tom, you had a pretty good realization a few years back when it comes to calling turkeys. About the difference between
Calling turkeys.
Yeah.
And
So if you want to maybe break into that epiphany you had, and it's probably been, you could probably use that as most of your success has come from this epiphany you've had.
Absolutely, 100%. So, I used to go out in the woods, and I'd sit there, and I'd turkey call, and I wasn't having a lot of success. So then you got to switch your mindset up from turkey calling to calling turkeys. And when you can make that mental switch from turkey calling to calling turkeys,
it's a game changer.
it is an absolute game changer. You have to become the turkey and call the other turkeys. You can't just go out there and be a human turkey calling. No. You have to call turkeys. And once you make that switch, oh my gosh. Actually, I had this epiphany up at the Morrison farm. We were up there. So it was... Frank, what are you doing?
Well, it's we've been going for a little while, and like Nick said earlier, everyone's been in quarantine for a while. You're not allowed to go out to eat, so I figured we would throw an extra smoke break in this week, so everyone has something else to try. Just another little recipe to smack down on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you want me to take the reins on this one?
It sounds
Yeah,
like
why
you're
don't you?
excited for it, so why
Yeah,
don't you lay
sure.
it on us?
So I'm going to do smoked turkey breasts. It's
Another turkey one. I like it.
turkey season,
Calling turkeys, turkey
Yeah,
calling.
remember that. You don't go out in the woods and turkey call. Go out in the woods and call turkeys.
And then when you kill one, this is how you're going to cook it.
Yep. Or if you want to buy the breast. Actually, I don't know if you... Can you,
You
buy
can
just
definitely
turkey
buy
breast?
turkey breasts.
Just
Yeah.
the breast? I've always just seen the whole bird.
Tom, why don't you just tell us what the recipe is?
Anyway, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start with a brine, okay? And you're going to want to soak this bird.
What's a brine?
We're going to get there. You're going to want to soak it in the brine. And here's how you're going to want to make the brine. You're going to use a bottle of apple cider, okay?
A jug?
Like a gallon or?
Enough to cover the breasts. Probably, I mean, depending on how big the turkey is, probably, yeah.
Okay, so you're just submerging them in whatever.
So you're getting a
container
pan
they're in.
or dish or something, putting the breasts in,
Yeah,
and then you're making
64 ounces
Okay.
of apple cider.
Okay. about 62.5 ounces.
Yeah, then you're going to want to get, about 3/4 cup of salt. Mix that in there with half a cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, and a little bit of garlic.
There's
If you love
never
garlic,
enough
maybe
garlic.
a garlic bulb. I love garlic. And yeah, you're just going to let that soak. Probably overnight. I like to put it in the fridge in the evening, about 5 o'clock, and then fire up the smoker the next day, bright and early in the morning. So after that soaks, what you're going to want to do is prepare your smoker. I like to set it to about 225, 250 degrees.
It's quite the range.
Not really. 25 degrees.
That's yeah.
Some say it's a game changer, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, well, that's what you're going to do. And after it soaks in the brine, you can rub it down with a dry rub if you want. It's not going to come out in the oil like Nick's stupid recipe.
Yeah. Maybe Hunt Chef's actually got some pretty good rubs.
Yeah, check him out.
They sure do.
Yeah, so
Good stuff.
try those. I know he's got several dry rubs. A couple of them are like turkey takedown, or no, that's taco takedown. He's got several different rubs on there. Check him out, and perfect for smoking birds.
Yeah, definitely want to use those for smoking.
Yeah, so you got your breasts. They've been marinating for 12 hours in that brine.
Is it marinade or marinade?
Marinier.
Marinier.
You let it
I don't think that's right.
let it marinate for about 12 hours. Fire up your smoker, 225, 250 degrees, give or take, and rubber down. I usually like to do you could do Cajun. Cajun's good. You could do. I try and steer away from like the steak seasoning. You don't want to put steak seasoning on a turkey, but if you got
Doesn't check out.
like a sweet smoky,
Any dry rub, really.
Well, no, not a steak dry rub. You silly goose.
There's not really much of
Montreal steak seasoning, Nick.
It's steak seasoning, not steak rub.
It's the
You
same.
rub it on a steak.
It's the same thing.
No.
But anyway, like they have like those sweet apple and hickory, whatever. Put a good dry rub on there, and you're gonna want to put her in the smoker for roughly 3 hours.
What kind of wood do you like to use?
So what I like to use is I like a smoky flavor. I know Nick and Frank, you like to smoke with apple, but I like to smoke with like a hickory or a mesquite, get a nice strong smoky flavor. But if
It's like smoking a no filter.
yeah, pretty much. But you guys interrupting me, it just throws me off key.
Tom, this
Right.
is literally the first time you've been interrupted this episode.
I know. No, so I like a smoky flavor, hickory, mesquite. Nick and Frank, they like to smoke with apple, but that's a very mild smoke. You won't get a lot of smoky flavor. But if you want some smoke flavor, but you don't want it too smoky, you can alternate. You can put in a little bit of apple, let that burn, a little bit of hickory, let that burn, go back and forth. So you put that in 3.5 hours until it reaches at 165 degrees is when that is going to be done. So pull that out. And this is the key part right here, guys. What you're going to want to do is wrap them suckers in tin foil for about 10 to 15 minutes. And that's going to let all the juices stay locked in there. Because if you pull that out of the smoker and slice right into it, all your juices are going to run out onto your tray. And you don't want that. You wrap them in tin foil, let it sit for 10, 15 minutes. Then when you slice that bird open, all the juices are going to be locked in there, and it's just going to be delicious. So soak it in the brine, give it a rub, put it in the smoker, 225 to 250, 3.5-ish hours, 160 degrees. Pull it out, wrap it in foil, let it stand 10, 15 minutes.
Got yourself a bomb-ass turkey breast.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, they are good. They are good.
Thanks for that smoke break, Tom.
Yeah.
As you were saying, Morrison Farms turkey hunting.
Sitting at the table and trying to convince Frank that he's got to come out on this one last hunt.
Okay,
with me.
I had to leave.
He was still there when I got back.
That's because it was a very fast hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, we could have doubled down.
We could have, but I was packing my stuff to leave.
Yeah. So, anyway, we're sitting at the table. I'm trying to convince him, and I'm like, Frank, this is the game changer. I switched over.
We had been hunting this group of birds for 2 days now.
Yeah.
And we were getting closer and closer, and I had to leave early, so I was not able to go out on this morning hunt.
I tell him, I'm like, Frank, I'm no longer turkey calling. I'm going out there and I'm going to call these turkeys, and I'm going to call them right in. And I got to go. I'm leaving right now. Whatever. So I go out there and I call turkeys. I call these 4 birds right to the gun. Smoke one. Get back to camp. Guess who's still there? Frank.
I was literally in the truck pulling out of the driveway, taking out fence posts with the truck
Yeah,
as I
but
was going.
apparently you didn't have to get home that quick because we did have a celebratory beer.
Well, at
Yeah,
that point,
and
I
then-
had to stay.
Yeah. Well, we could have had celebratory beers on a double. But
It would have been better.
He had to. I think he said he had to go paint his bedroom closet or something. Like,
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, something really important.
You're dumb.
Yeah, but yeah. So you make that switch over, and then it's a game changer. It really is. It's helped me in the long run, in the short run too.
Yeah.
It's just overall. There's all positives, no negatives really.
I feel that.
So before we wrap things up here, we had talked earlier about a scenario of controversy between me and Tom, turkey hunting.
Yeah.
So before we
sure
close
did.
her out, we're going to tell my side, and then Tom's going to tell
Why do
his
you
side.
get to tell yours first?
Well, because I'm talking now. And
Fair enough.
so I'll tell my side without any interruptions. Tom's going to tell his side without any interruptions. And then you guys can let us know who you think, just give us your thoughts. So here we go. Me, Tom.
I tell you what.
Already an interruption.
interrupting.
Holy cow.
That was almost record time.
So you know how this goes. Nick always he posts a picture and updates. New podcast is out. If you think Nick is in the right for this story, leave a comment. If you think I'm right, leave a like.
See, that's bias
Nope,
already.
That's how it's going to be.
People
Nick,
just
go
like
ahead.
it and don't even bother.
Nick, go ahead. Tell your story. That's if you believe me,
That's
leave a
interruptions
like.
already.
If you believe Nick, leave a comment.
All right, so it's me and my buddy Paul are hunting on one spot. Tom and my cousin Corey are in another. The way this sets up, we're at Climber. There's usually one flock of birds, and I set up in the spot I typically do, just above the creek bed on the bottom of the hill. Tom and Corey.
Typically, this was our first turkey hunt
Oh
up there.
my
I don't want to
God.
hear this is where we typically set up. No, this was the first time we ever hunted birds up there.
I don't know if you remember the whole no interruptions.
There
'cause
were
you're
rules at the beginning.
Tantalizing
Sorry, that was
the
the
story.
last time.
I could make this really hard for you now since you've already burned your last one. So we're set up at the bottom, me and Paul, at the bottom of this hill just above the creek bed. Corey and Tom are about 100 yards back from us and, further down the edge of the ravine. Like they're like parallel with the ravine. Set up, I'm calling and get some birds answering. Tom's farther down. He's also calling, to the same birds. They're answering them. And then for whatever reason, this bird decided to come down off the roost extremely early. I saw the bird running down the hill, seen that red head. Couldn't really tell about much beard size. But like I said, we hadn't killed a bird up at this farm yet, so I was just out there to get a gobbler. So as he had gotten straight in line with me, it was a pretty far shot, but decided to go for it. Shot a little high and dropped the turkey right where he stood. Ran up on him. Found out later it was actually 57 yards. Pretty far shot, but got the bird back to the truck. went and had breakfast nice and early at the Main Street Diner. So that was my story, interrupted twice, but that was the story. Tom, why don't you give your side of the story?
So we had 4 guys up there, 2 groups. Nick and buddy Paul, me and my cousin Corey. Nick and Paul decide we're going to set up at the field and watch these birds come out in the morning. And we said, okay, me and Corey are going to set up.
So I'm going to use one of my interruptions right here. If you actually thought I was going to the top of the field, I wouldn't have walked in with you at the logging trail. All I'm saying.
Me and Corey didn't walk in at the logging trail. We walked in through the big field on Pettit Road.
Credibility shot.
So
no.
Me and Corey walk into the woods through Pettit, through the big field, and get our spot set up. Okay. Nick and Paul say, we're going to go set up on the field and wait for these birds to come out in the morning. Turns out that's not what they did. They walked down the main...
I'm going to interrupt, even though I have nothing to do with this. Nick has done this to me before. He has said he's going one place to me as we walk in together, and then he goes a totally different place and ends up almost right on top of me. So
for those of you out there listening, Nick is cheesing ear to ear because he knows
they'll never know
this is true.
It's not a video podcast, so
it's what happens.
I could be over here frowning.
No, so me and Corey, we go in on the field edge, walk into the woods about 100 yards, set up. Nick and Paul, supposedly, we're going to go wait the field edge and wait for them to come out. So if they came up
Which
the
doesn't
hill,
make any sense because I've already told you how I don't sit field edges for hunting. So even if I did say
you
that...
have never once sat a field edge. That is a...
Not on my terms.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know not on your terms because you lied to me that morning. Anyway.
That's for the fans
Anyway,
to decide.
Nick and Paul decide last minute, I guess, we're going to cut into the woods here and sit right on the bottom of this ravine. So they are about 100 yards in front of me and 57 yards to my right.
That number is going to come into play in a little bit.
Yeah, 100 yards in front, 57 to the right. There's a bird.
Now, we do know that Tom's not good at math.
But he's making a triangle, which is a shape.
So there's a bird up on the hillside directly in front of me about 200 yards. And he's gobbling, and I let out some yelps, and he hammers back. And Nick apparently got jealous and was like, I'm going to call to this bird. So Nick would call, and I knew it was Nick calling. I can pick Nick out from a crowd of 100 with a turkey call. And as soon as I heard that yelp, I'm like, that's Nick. He snuck in between us. He said he was going up to the field. He's right at the bottom of that hill. And so I'm like, son of a bitch. So Nick calls, nothing. I call, hammers back. So Nick tries to get a little fancy, do some excited calling, nothing. I would call, hammers back. 5:50, actually more like 5:49, this bird flies down. It is still dark out. This bird flies down and starts coming down the hill. I didn't know this until later. I hear a shot go off. And I'm like, well, that must have been Nick. And so I go up there, and Nick's standing there with his long beard, and he said, yep, 57 yards, literally running down the hill. I'm like,
running right to where?
Running right to me. And you snuck in between and intercepted it.
I'm just going to say one thing. I put myself in a position for the best opportunity to kill a bird. And if that's not what you're supposed to do out there in the woods, I don't know what you're supposed to do out there. Case closed.
Remember that little scenario I told you guys about where you have the hunter in the front and then the caller behind you? Nick did that scenario without letting me know.
Without the caller knowing.
Yeah. He just decided, I'm going to be the hunter. Tom's going to be the caller for me. I'm going to intercept these birds on their way down to Tom. So
let us know what you think.
Anyway, bottom line is I was super pumped for Nick. This was a big bird.
It was.
We were all excited.
Hangs above the cabin right now.
Yeah, it's actually its beard is our chandelier.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. But like I said, let us know what you guys think. Who's in the right, who's in the wrong. And like I
Leave
said,
a
it's
like
only,
if you think I'm in the right. Leave a comment if you think
not how
Nick's
it's
in
going
the
to go.
right.
But, like I said, everybody, obviously, we're still in quarantine here in Pennsylvania, which is absolutely ridiculous. But the outdoors are never closed, so just make sure you guys are getting outside.